Now, it is very much a privilege also to have another former executive director, Mike Wall. We now want to look back to some of the history of Across, and Mike did his PhD on that topic, right? Yeah. So he is going to take us back to the foundation of Across.
Thank you, Roger.
So that we can look back and then we will look forward.
So thank you, Roger. Roger's given me 10 minutes, which I appreciate, and he's then going to do the next 50 years in the final 10 minutes. So what I wanted to do was focus on the events of 50 years ago. So I've just got three topics: the Addis Ababa Agreement, the origins of Across, and what I'm calling the tipping point, all around this period, 1972. So, of course, you know all this. I don't have to tell you. South Sudan became independent 1st of January 1956. The army rebellion in the southern region started in Torit in 1955 and led to a full-scale civil war. And the outbreak of war was followed in 1962 by the Missionary Societies Act, which restricted Christian missionaries from carrying out all forms of mission work except worship in their own compound. And that then led by February 64 to the government policy of expulsion of all missionaries from South Sudan. And 272 Catholic and 62 Protestant missionaries were expelled. Now, there was also at this time a dramatic development of the churches in South Sudan, who went back to their grassroots as a mass movement and, separated from their pastors and leaders in the bush, continued to flourish by God's grace. Then, May 69, there's a change of leadership in Khartoum, and Numeri comes to power, and partly as a result of the intervention of the All Africa Council of Churches, a peace agreement is negotiated. On the 27th of March 1972, Joseph Lagu, the commander-in-chief of the Southern Forces, signs the agreement and effectively brings the war to a close. And as a result, a new regional government is created in the south, and its leaders are keen to call back the mission societies. They had done so much to educate and develop southern Sudan in the past, they wanted them back. So that's our background, the Addis Ababa Agreement. This point in history, 50 years ago, where things are dramatically changing and missionaries are wanted back in South Sudan. But you have to now switch your focus to Nigeria, because from 1967 to 70, in Nigeria we have the terrible tragedy of the Biafran War. And a man called Ken Tracy, a missionary with SIM, who'd worked in Nigeria since 1956, had started a successful rehabilitation program run by a number of missions. Ken was a New Zealander. He was also a dental surgeon and a public health administrator. And he had the vision of doing something similar in South Sudan. So Ken, in April 1972, met with Jeff Dearsley, the leader of SUM UK, and some other mission leaders, and as a result founded an interdenominational program which was called Across. And that was, of course, as we've had mentioned, SUM, SIM, MAF, and AIM. And you'll probably know that originally it was going to be Cross, Committee for the Rehabilitation of Southern Sudan, but they added the A to make it more acceptable in a Muslim environment, ACROSS. The first executive committee was held in Nairobi on the 7th of August 1972. And the first international worker reached the field in November 1972. She was Erika Vasa from the Swiss Evangelical Nile Mission. And one of the documents I've seen said this: she was flown alone by plane to a point approximately 30 miles from Chwebet and left in the hands of several government officials who took her by Land Rover to her destination. And off we go. November 1972, 50 years ago. You can imagine Erika out there in the bush, bumping along in that Land Rover. The work grew rapidly, and by the end of 72, there were 19 expat workers, and by the end of 73, there were 36. So we've rapidly covered the first 2 points, which is the Addis Ababa Agreement, how God prepared the ground, and then the origins of ACROSS, the vision that God gave to Ken Tracy from his work in Biafra, and then finally what I call the tipping point. And just last week I was on a train in Switzerland travelling through Lausanne, and I was thinking about the Lausanne Congress. There's about to be another one in South Korea. And at that point, Roger hadn't called me up. I didn't know I was doing this. But the tipping point for ACROSS was the Lausanne Congress of 1974. This was John Stott's initiative on world evangelization. Because the founding groups of ACROSS, SIM, AIM, MAF, and SUM, were wanting to terminate the ACROSS program. Their view was that being focused on relief and rehabilitation, the program was outside their mandate and capability. But they were encouraging Ken to find new organisations to support it. At Lausanne, Ken called a sideline meeting. This special meeting was attended by 16 organisations, and the meeting was unanimous, quote, ACROSS should continue. And it was stated, if ACROSS moved out of Sudan, this would be a disaster. And the meeting then converted itself to the first meeting of the Provisional Board, and history shows that this point in the Lausanne Congress in 1974, at that meeting, ACROSS moved from being an ad hoc relief committee to being a permanent, independent organisation. And then rapid growth follows, and I'm just finishing now. Until 1975, ACROSS had staff only west of the Nile. It then expanded to Pibor Post. It had some work in the Nuba Mountains, and by October 1980, it had 90 international staff from 8 different countries in 14 locations, of which 50 were now on their second or third term. It had 250 Sudanese staff and 5 Kenyan staff. And so it's founded.